David Suzuki is tonight's visionary.
To me, spirit, and maybe people in the religious community would disagree, but spirit is what keeps us in our place, that we recognize that we are a part of nature, we emerged from the natural world, and we will return back to it when we die. If we don't have nature as our birthplace, and to know that even after we die, nature, our source of life, nature will persist, then I think we really wither. The great challenge of human beings is the knowledge from the moment we begin to think that we're going to die. It's a terrible burden that we bear. And I think that spirit has enabled us to take this almost unbearable load of our own mortality. The great psychologist Maslow saw that we have a nested series of needs. I mean, our most basic needs are determined by the fact that we're animals. And as animals, if we don't have clean air, clean water, clean food that comes from the soil, clean energy, well, we die. If we don't have biodiversity around, we can't get those things so that we could use. So that's our fundamental biological need. But then, if you satisfy those needs, another set of needs emerges that's determined by the fact that we're social creatures. And as social creatures, the remarkable thing is the most important thing we need is love. And people go, oh my God, this guy is really flipped out now. You know what? I mean that in the most scientifically profound way. Human beings have performed these terrible experiments where children have grown up deprived of love in Bosnia, in Rwanda, in Cambodia. And we looked, for my film, we looked at children in Romania. In Romania, where there are hundreds of thousands of children that have been put up in orphanages, where they've been fed, clothed, and sheltered, but never hugged and loved, you see children, they die. They're fundamentally crippled physically and psychically. We need love to be fully human, to know how to love and to care for other people. So then if you have opportunities for love to be available to children, another set of needs emerges. And to me, in these times of rampant materialism, the greatest need we have is for spirit. Spirit that informs us that we emerged out of the natural world, that we are a part of it, and when we die, we will go back to it. I don't have a religious faith, but I feel very strongly influenced by my father, who when he died, he said, look, I'd like this obituary, and he wrote it. And what it said is that he passed away and he was cremated and his ashes were thrown on the winds off this island that he loved. And that he said, whenever you hear the wind sigh through the trees, or you see the flash of a fish in the ocean, or the birds flying in the air, I will be there. And he had this very strong, he was born in Canada, but he had a very strong influence of Japanese nature worship. And he said, look, even when you burn a body, the atoms are still there. So that when you throw them on the winds, we are reabsorbed by the rest of nature. That was his sense, and I believe that. And I've come to feel that that gives me my spiritual sense of connectedness. We are in a time now when we live lives that are so caught up in consumerism, in accumulating material wealth and comfort. And we no longer seem to be a part of anything. We don't have the humility to think that there are sacred places where humans go to be filled up with satisfaction of our spiritual needs, where we don't see resources or opportunity. We see this as a part of God's creation, something that we should go to with great respect and reverence. We need spirit in the worst way. I've been profoundly influenced by natives. I must admit, right off the bat, I've been an atheist all my life. And I guess one equates that with a lot of scientists, although I know many scientists who have very strong faith. But I've never felt the need to have a God. But as I've spent more and more time with First Nations people and Indigenous people around the world, I've come to recognize that they have a spirituality that resonates very well with me. They speak of other creatures as their brothers and sisters, and they mean that literally. This isn't a poetic way of speaking. And as a geneticist, what's intrigued me is that as scientists have come to understand the genetic makeup, the so-called human genome, where we've deciphered all of the letters in the information there, the amazing thing is not that we can now manipulate DNA and create new drugs and all that. The amazing insight, the great discovery is in the human genome are genes identical to those that are found in trees, that are found in insects, that are found in fish and birds and bacteria. And what they show is a remarkable proof of what Native people have always said. They are our living relatives. They are our kin. And you know, I feel if we believe that, our attitude to the world and to other creatures is profoundly different. If these are our relatives, surely we treat them in a different way than simply regarding them as resources. And the great anthropologist Wade Davis said in the series that I did, he said, I met him in Peru, and he took me to a sacred valley, and he said, you know, a child growing up in Chinchero, one of these villages in the Sacred Valley, learns that all of these mountains are an apu. Apu means God. He said, that's not a symbol of God. They believe the mountain is a god. And if you think of a mountain as a god, you're going to treat that mountain in a very different way from a kid growing up in British Columbia who looks at that mountain and says, whoa, look at all those ores and those minerals in there. We can mine the heck out of that. So you realize that the way that we see the world shapes the way that we deal with the world. So we need the sacred there so that we have much greater respect. To me, there is no clash. If you have a group of people, as you do with fundamentalists, who feel that the Bible is the literal word of God and must be believed, then you have a clash with science. But that's one very small part of Christianity. Catholics, for example, and the vast bulk of Protestants have no problem with their religion and the teachings of science. It's only fundamentalism that clashes. To me, science is one way of knowing. It's a very powerful way, but I think scientists have tended to get puffed up with the insights they've gained. You know, what we do is we focus on a part of nature. We try to bring it in the lab and control everything impinging on that part of nature. The assumption has always been that if we can look at the bits and pieces of nature, then the world is like a giant machine. It's a mechanistic world. And by looking at the springs and the cogs and the wheels and learning everything about that, we can eventually fit them together and create a picture of the entire universe. That's called reductionism. Reduce your focus to the smallest part, then build up the whole. What physics in the early part of the 20th century physicists realized, is it doesn't work. When you take two parts of nature that you study separately and put them together, they interact. And there are what they call emergent properties. Something comes out of their interaction that you can't predict on the basis of their individual properties. So emergent properties preclude any understanding of the whole by studying the parts. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. There are many things that science cannot possibly describe or understand, but that doesn't mean that they're not real. So I think that we should take scientists and what they're getting, but we should put it in its place. It's a powerful way of knowing, but much of what really matters to us, like love and spirit, consciousness, lies outside the area that science can attack right now. You know, up until very recently, we were like just any other species on the planet. Suddenly we've exploded into this gigantic force. Now in the past, when people depleted resources in an area, well, they either learned to live in a different way or they moved on. We can't move on anymore. The planet is packed with human beings, and our impact on the earth is getting stronger, heavier and heavier. And I think it's the first time that instead of just thinking about ourselves and what's going on, we now have to think about what are all 6.2 billion human beings doing. We've never had to worry about the collective impact of our species. Now we have to, and that's not easy. We're not used to that. We're still a very local creature. We can see things around here and respond to it. Very hard to think of 6 billion is such a huge number. I don't think we can really take that all in. Now, each of us is 1 out of 6.2 billion. We're trivial. We're insignificant. But hundreds of thousands, millions of insignificant people making small changes in their lives can add up to a very significant force. And so I think this is what we've got to do now. We've got to realize we're part of a huge problem that is created by all of us. So now let's become part of a solution by beginning to join others and make changes in our lives.
If you would like to sign up for David Suzuki's Nature Challenge, log on to the VisionTV website and we'll tell you how. After the break, we'll take a look at some of the stories we're working on for next week's show.